Now I'm really happy. Now I'm really happy to welcome back a UFC sports betting powerhouse in Mr. Lou Finicaro. You can see his stuff at VSiN. You can see his stuff at gamblou.com. And of course, the Bout Business podcast. Lou, welcome back to the show. How the heck are you doing?
I'm doing great. I consider myself a fight enthusiast. I think that covers it really great. Been doing it for years. And I'm really tickled to be rejoining you, Kiev, and talking fights, especially with the card we got coming up.
Oh, I've been looking forward to this, man. And I was even on a run before we jumped in. A little bit out of breath right now. There's a little rumor that a, a VSiN person actually records podcasts as he runs. I'm not going to mention any names, but if I did that, I would die flat on the ground, Lou. I don't even know if I'd come back up. I'm not quite in as good a shape as that individual.
Well, we know that they're not talking about me either. So I know young Mr. Peterson's a driven man, and I suppose a long run, a guy like that needs more than anybody.
I'll tell you this. Every time I run, I just can't imagine being in a grappling match against Valentina Shevchenko or Shavkat Rakhmonov or something like that. It's just got to be absolutely gruesome. And we have some good fights in this card, and that's why I'm so happy to have you back and talk about it. Of course, we have the main event with Cyril Gane and John Jones, and we'll get to that. But first, I want to ask you what your thoughts are in the card in general, probably from a fan perspective, maybe, and from a sports betting value perspective.
Well, first of all, I come from an era from 1985 to 2000 where I had no fights to work. There was boxing and it was polluted, and you'd get one good fight and seven suppository fights to get to the good fight, so it wasn't worth it. And then finally, this UFC came along, mixed martial arts, and now I'm the beneficiary of 40 to 44 UFC cards per year. 10 to 15 fights per card. So, as a fight handicapper, I couldn't be happier. I couldn't feel more fortunate. And when you get to the 44 cards, you really boil them down to about 10 or 12. And those happen to be the one monthly pay per view events that the UFC has where they try and stack names, styles, and personalities into their fight card. We have one here. I love the card. We have ladies fighting. We have 125-pound men fighting. Yet we got heavyweights fighting as well, nonetheless, on the main event. So 2 championship bouts. It's going to be a great card. People that are also fight enthusiasts are salivating over this card to be held in Vegas. However, at T-Mobile in the larger cage with fans. Both things that have to be factored into one's handicapping, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And it's a great card because you have a lot of people put Nunez as the GOAT. Shevchenko is GOAT B, if anything. One of my favorite fighters, best technical fighter I've seen, in my opinion. And she's on this card, and I'm real excited to talk about that. And obviously, the John Jones Gane fight is amazing. I love this card from a fan perspective, at least up top. I think maybe down low, little bit more suspect. I do like Brunson. I like Duplessis, but at the same time, it's all worth it for the main card. From a gambling perspective, though, Lou, to be honest with you, I have not made many plays, and I was looking forward to this show to see maybe if you can take me off or on a certain side of the fence in some of these. But at the same time, maybe I'm a little shy. I'm having a decent year. Last year was really rough on me. I had a nice comeback at the end, but I will admit that 2022 was a down year for my betting in the UFC. But I have a good start so far in 2023, but I only want to be on winners and value. So hopefully we can find something. And it's always good to leave a bet off the table if you don't think it's perfect.
Well, listen, Kiev, in 2022, Favorites ran 67% in the UFC after traditionally for the last decade prior running 62.5 to 63.5%. So somebody getting a hiccup last year is somewhat explainable. It happened to me as well. It wasn't the year that I anticipated in any way, shape, or form. However, for those of us that do this as a business and list our results, it's right there for everyone to see. And really, just like a fighter that loses a fight, you have a poor result. If you're any good, you go back into the gym, you get in better conditioning, and you look forward to bouncing back in your next fight.
Well, if only 33% of dogs won, those dogs must have been the other half of my parlay ticket on a lot of those favorites, my friend. Well, we have an amazing card, and we're going to start out with the early prelims. I'm going to pick a fight that I'm not quite on yet, but I also think that this number is a little bit ridiculous because I've watched Ian Gary fight. And don't get me wrong, I was on him a couple times, but I also thought that I had a couple close calls with him recently. He's kind of the new, everyone says this, the new Conor McGregor type thing that they're trying to build up. He's a very tall man. He has a lot of size. But I'm just, he's 10-0. I'm just not buying this minus 700. I'm not buying that. You're looking at the high 80 percentile when it comes to percentage of implied odds. That Gabe Green fight, I thought Green had some good shots on him. He went the distance with Weeks. Jordan Williams, Jack Grant. I am not looking at these as high profile fighters. And I'm not saying that Keenan Song is a high profile fighter, but he is a winning fighter, and he's been in the UFC for 5 or 6 fights. He has a couple losses, one by decision, his recent one to Max Griffin by KO. But I think that if he could last with Gary, possibly catch him, he seems to throw some decent strikes. He knows how to have a ground game. He's got 8 submissions. Maybe this plus 70 is a little bit too much to pass by. So this is my lean. I'm going to lean Keenan Song here at plus 470. I'm going to see what your thoughts are on this fight.
Well, I don't have a ton because as I've been assessing this card, there appear to be 1 or 2 fights that I tend to think might be setups. I think Song is there by design to make Gary look good. Gary 8 years younger, 3 years taller. He's a new dad, and he opens 375. Now he's 675. I just don't. I don't know how to attack that when I think the UFC's clearly behind him. I would say this, in essence, as I would assess this fight, I do think Song is more worthy than this price is giving him. And so maybe instead of taking Song to win the fight, I'd look at that total 1.5 over minus 130. I think if you were to take the over, you're in essence betting Keenan Song. And I think he's durable enough to take this fight to decision.
That's a great way to look at it. Yeah. Great. That's why I have you on, buddy. Great. I was thinking if you wanted to do 2 sides, maybe you take Song inside the distance, which gives you a much fatter price, but maybe you take Ian Gary by decision. I don't know what that, it's probably still somewhat juiced maybe in that, but a decision's going to go to him because you said it all right there. This might be a setup fight for the UFC, and he's a big name and he's got the size to win a decision. Obviously, if it goes to decision, he's going to have some strikes and probably some control too. So I like that. It's only at minus 130. That is one thing I didn't look at. I'm going to study that a little bit more.
Gary, decision plus 240 at DraftKings currently.
Okay. That's better than I thought.
And really, both of those, that one there is an opportunity to pick up Gary at a great plus price, but you're really trusting Song to be able to be durable enough. And listen, this Chinese thing isn't fake. The UFC wants success in China. That's why this young man's here. And you've done your homework by looking through his past record. He's a worthy UFC caliber fighter, and Gary is still a little bit green.
Very true. And Song has went to decision on some of his losses to Morano. Um, Brad Riddell was a tough fight for him in way back in 2017, but he went past 1.5 rounds on that one. So yeah, I'm gonna be really leaning towards this over -130. That's not a bad price at all for this situation. I think Song is durable enough, being that he only lost 3 times and it was 3 KOs. Gary, 4 decisions, 5 KOs, 1 submission. So definitely going to dive deep into that. Anything on the early prelims that stuck out to you?
This kid Simon that comes in from South Africa fighting Manny Martinez. Now we cheated on this one because in the podcast last week I took the Canadian fighter Mike Mallet against the other Canadian, and we took him in a parlay, tying him to Simon in this fight. Simon at the time -250. He's now spiked even higher than that. He's at plus 305 now. He opened -180. The kid is extremely talented, but he's green. He's stepping up, and he's 22 years old. So while he's highly talented and a lethal fighter, he's going to be giving away some size to Manny Martinez. He's going to be giving away some experience to Manny Martinez. And though I don't think Manny Martinez has the tools that the young Simon has, I think this is going to be a highly competitive fight, but I think it's going to be hard for Simon to lose this fight. Now you look at the total in this one, and it's 2.5 as a pick'em. I think that if anything, Simon could surprise me. I'm looking for a very competitive fight, but one in which Simon wins. And in that parlay, he's a plus 106. It would be very, very difficult for me to today sitting here saying what I just said to recommend Simon. In fact, I'd almost recommend listeners consider Manny Martinez as somewhat of a decent opportunity. Experience, size. The only thing I don't like from Martinez is he comes from Glory. And so as a gym, they've been displaced, and I don't know where he spent this training camp. I'm happy to be on the Simon side at plus 106 when he goes off a -300. But if I was looking at it from a perspective without having any parlay on Simon, I think there's a couple long bomb dogs on here. I have 2 or 3, I think, before Martinez. And that's why I'm really not that interested in this fight other than the position I hold.
Wow, that is an amazing position to hold. How long ago did you bet that?
Well, that was a parlay. You can do
Parlay.
these
Okay.
on DraftKings. It's such a great opportunity. So I was able to parlay a fighter from last week to this week. And so
there you go.
Mallet -220, Simon -250 gives you just over plus $1. And so now we're holding great advantage in a favored fighter. But as you know, Kiev, that's a good part of the battle, but that ain't all the battle. Now the 22-year-old kid's got to travel across the world to Las Vegas and, bright lights, first big, huge card with John Jones and beat a killer. So there's a lot of work left to do.
There is a lot of work, and Martinez has a little bit of the experience. Yeah, it's he looks like a hungry young fighter. I leaned Martinez at first look, and then I kind of put a little X through him because I do think that Simon should be the dominant fighter and should win. I hate those ones where the price might be a little off and a little overjuiced, but you still don't think they're going to win. Hence that they come up with the term, it's either the dog or just passing on the fight, right?
Well, and when you're only hitting 33% dogs, it's better to shoot with a rifle, not a shotgun, because you're getting 3 a night. You're getting 3.5 dogs a night out of 14 fights. Man, that's tough.
Yeah, it sure is tough. Totally agree with that. Let's move on to the prelims there. And there's some really interesting fights on this. I will admit that I have had my ups and downs with Derek Brunson. I thought when he fought whoever Driscus Duplessis fought last time, Till, that's who it was. I'm thinking off my head. I was on Brunson at good plus money against Till because I just didn't see Till having the grappling power. Unfortunately, Duplessis might. I thought that when Duplessis fought Till, not well, it was a while ago, not too long ago, he didn't finish him really significantly to me. I thought that Till was in that fight for way longer than I suspected pre-flop, Blue. So, I know Till has to be getting better. I know Duplessis has to be getting better. You have a big age advantage for Duplessis here. Duplessis significant strike 6.6 to Brunson 3.5, but Brunson's going to want to get this to the mat. But I think Duplessis can play with him on the mat as well. I just like the fact that Brunson is once again a dog and he's performed extremely well as a dog. So I put a lean on Derek Brunson as a dog. I'm seeing where you're going with on this fight.
Yeah, I'm tracking that fight as opening at a number that I believe is correct, and that's Duplessis minus 150, Brunson plus 130. I'll give him that for two reasons. I'll give Duplessis the advantage because this will be his third fight in 7 months. That's a lot, but we're not taking that into account. We're looking at the last two, Till and Tavares, and the good, nice wins. Tavares is not equal to the worst win that our friend Brunson has had. Okay. In the meantime, Till's washed. He's out of the UFC and he needs to get his head right and hopefully try and enter again. So I look at these two Duplessis wins as being somewhat fantasy based. I don't want to go over the top, but I respect Tavares, but Till I don't. And the last win before that, Trevin Giles in July of 21, he is stepping up big time. This is his third fight in 7 months. And oh, by the way, Tavares is a wrestler, but didn't wrestle him. He's never fought anyone that's going to go out there with the wrestling chops that Brunson has. Brunson, meanwhile, yeah, he's 39, long in the tooth, but he was on his way to a championship opportunity until he ran into Jared Cannonier, who he was giving all he could handle to before Cannonier caught him. Now, Duplessis, a heavy striker, strong guy, says he can wrestle. We haven't seen it. In this fight, if it stays standing, I think Brunson's going to be in trouble. In this fight, if Brunson's able to go in there and show off who he's been in against and his wrestling chops and get this thing to the floor and get on top, I think he can be dangerous and reign supreme from on top. I like Simon, the South African, but I don't like Duplessis, the South African, especially the way this line is moved. You can get Brunson at the plus 180, plus 190 or better. I'm kind of waiting on the wings on this because if it continues to go up, I'm going to be passive and take every bit of money on Brunson that I can as an underdog. I think he shows up and gives a really competitive fight. And again, it's Duplessis flying in from across the world to get acclimated to Las Vegas for the third time 7 months.
And that's a great point. I think back in 2021, when I had a very good UFC year, I thrived on the dogs plus 200 to plus 220. And I think the reason that is because of the parlay pieces would eventually push those numbers up. People love parlaying the minus 230s, minus 250s, because you put those two together, you get your minus 105, you get your minus 110. That's just what the general gambler thinks. And you sometimes get a little extra value on your dogs. I can see that with Duplessis. I can see him being a parlay piece with a lot of places. And I think Brunson has a fighting chance. If I was going to line this fight, I would think that Brunson should only be maybe plus 150, maybe plus 130, something like that, and then the same thing with Duplessis. So I am with you on that. I wrote down Brunson as my lean. I'm glad you're on that side. Why don't you pick a prelim that you would like to talk about?
Oh my God, the banger is Barrio and Julian Marquez. Unfortunately, I can't quite understand which way I want to go on this. Here's two guys that are just mirror images of one another. One's from Canada, one's from US. Now, Marquez, again, another Glory MMA fighter that went to Colorado to train up at Factory X. So that's elevation, and I like elevation in a situation like that. He's very well rounded. He started and I track favorites that come priced minus 100 to minus 200. Those favorites that open in that range but grow, just like you were saying. Let's say a guy opens minus 180 and he evolves into minus 220. That's the biggest segment of underdogs to take and try and be profitable at. I've got numbers guys that have helped me with that. And
Nice.
so this fight kind of sits right in there because we've got Marquez that opens as I track. This one, Marquez opens minus 145, Barrio plus 125. These are bet online, and they take a bet at openers, by the way. And now we see that it's Barrio minus 150. The favorite switched. And so Marquez, who went from minus 145, is plus 130. Yeah, he's an inch taller, Marquez is. He's given away a little reach. In a fight that's going to go right down to the finish, I don't know how you don't consider the dog in a situation like that. I think there's a little bit of action on Barrio. I'm leaning to Marquez right now. I want to watch weigh-ins and everything, but I think to me, when you got a guy, sometimes you got to respect your line maker, and you got a guy that opened a favorite. Now he's a dog. I want to know why, and I may make Barrio prove to me that he should be the favorite.
I think the way he fought Rodriguez ruined it for him, or maybe made it better for the better. I mean, he just got hit by everything.
And he knows that. He knows that's why he's there. And Barrio's the same way. They're in there. They're in there to fire.
Yeah, he started out so good with the Phil Hawes takeout, head kicked him and looked awesome back in the Dana White Contender Series back in the day, 2017. Darren Stewart, thought I was high on him a long time ago. He ended up faltering. He lost to DiCiro. I don't even remember that.
That's a terrible loss, but that's really before he went to Glory and before he started to actually put himself together a little bit.
Okay. So I'm with Marquez. I'm not too impressed by his strength of schedule in general. Rodriguez, God, I'm still shaking my head how he lost that last fight. That was a shocker for me against that big Brazilian Bruno. But
yeah, Rodriguez is a little chinny. If you hit him right on the point, he'll go. I mean, that kid Williams in the Contender knocked him cold and isn't even in the organization any longer.
Yeah, I respect Barrialt's losses a little bit to Anthony Hernandez, a very great fighter, Chitty, and Dalcha. He fought some very good fighters, in my opinion, the last 3 or 4 fights. I understand the line. I wrote down Barrialt as a parlay piece, then I crossed him out. And then I wrote him down again, and then I crossed him out again. So I think I'm on the same thought process as you, trying to be like, why do I want to go on this guy who's had some pretty bad stretches back in 2019? Don't get me wrong, Jocko's a great fighter, but Andrew Sanchez, Jun Park, he's just tier 3 to me. I kind of think both of these guys are tier 3, so it almost makes sense to look at the dog. Kind of what you're saying right here. So I'm going to sit this one out. I still don't have a lean on this one. Totally get your points. Maybe there is now value because of that ugly Rodriguez knockout with Marquez, and maybe the big bear of a guy, comes up and wins this fight.
And I'm not using him. Okay, I'm watching it. I'm looking at it right now. I'm intrigued by it. The other one, Garbrandt, Trevin Jones. I mean, all week long, I'm on Trevin Jones. I mean, I'm ready to release him. I like him. I think, the Garbrandt being chinny. And then I went and looked at the fighter interviews and listened to Garbrandt. I totally changed my tune. That's a no play for me now. I firmly believe that Cody Garbrandt is going to look awesome and win the fight against Jones. and I was all set to bet Jones. And sometimes that happens. I'll go into my week knowing which out of these fights, I know I like this guy and that guy. And then I go in and start to do the work and get my fingernails dirty. And I find out that the guy I liked ain't the guy I can bet if I'm letting logic take over and not heart. And so, that's kind of how I'm looking at that one.
Well, let's hope Cody makes logic take over, because if he puts his chin out again, he's going to get knocked, and that's his problem. He's been chinny, but here's his fights. Kai Kara France, he's a great fighter, tier 1 type fighter. It's a fine loss. Rob Font, pretty good fighter. Pedro Munoz, good fighter. TJ Dillashaw, heck yeah, amazing fighter. So he has some very tough losses there. Tough fighters is what I'm trying to say, not bad losses, good losses, And then obviously before that, he was on a massive run in the UFC. He won like 6-7 in a row, knocked Dominic Cruz. Well, he won in a decision, unanimous, against Cruz, and we remember how good Cruz was. So,
and he beat Cruz at his own game: speed, footwork, depth, defense. And he starts that way in all his fights, starts dominating, and then he gets tagged and loses control and IQ, poor IQ. However, he's had to move from Alpha Male to Vegas. His family moved there. The kid showed unbelievable maturity. He's got new coaches. He's been sober a year. These are things that really matter to me. People may be laughing, but I'm telling you what, I went from watching Cody Garbrandt at the beginning of that, knowing I was betting the other kid, to now I'm off that fight. That's how much I was impressed by Garbrandt. Now, if the other kid goes out and tags him, okay. And is Garbrandt, did he lose his chin? I don't think you can lose a bad chin. But I do believe his mind is set and he's prepared to try and make a resurgence. And minus 170, I think when the fight's over, we'll be looking at that saying we lost an opportunity.
Very possible. What's interesting is that you could maybe attack it two ways. You can say Jones plus 275 by KO and Garbrandt by decision, plus 400, plus 450 in some books. I would.
That's complete genius right there. I couldn't agree more with it, because I believe that's how the fight lays out.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna write that down. And Cody, decision, Jones, KO. Yeah, we'll take a look at that one.
Garbrandt's poised to look well. I really think he is. I've been critical of the kid. I love to see a kid like a Patty or a Connor turn around and make it good. Connor, there's no hope for. Patty, there's probably not any hope for. But in this case, I think there's some hope.
No, there's not. I can't wait till Patty fights. What's his face? That's somebody. Gonna be yeah, somebody. Wasn't he? Anybody, right? Who is he talking with? I thought about
Gordon again.
Oh, geez. I thought he was.
Patty didn't like that Nate. And,
I thought Dober.
And someone else criticized Joe Rogan. He didn't like that Rogan and Nate criticized his effort. So he said he went back and watched that fight and he agrees with them and he's willing to give Gordon another fight. I don't know why we would need to see that again. To me, that was a close fight. I think Gordon edged it, but to run it back again seems folly.
Yeah, it does. That seems more like a grudge on against himself. No, I don't want to see it again. I want to see him fight Dober so I can bet everything I have on Dober and be happy about it.
Dober's a tough kid.
He's just rising up right now too. I'm a big Dober fan right now for some reason. I don't know why. Sometimes you just latch on to people.
Omaha, Nebraska, my hometown.
Yeah, there you go. It's funny. Cody, just by the way, has never subbed somebody. And so I'm not too worried about that. And Trevin Jones has never been knocked out. So there you go. Jones by KO, Cody by I like it. Let's move on to the main card, my friend. Let's start right out with the bottom one. Bo Nickel versus Jamie Pickett. And poor Jamie Pickett's at plus 900, plus 1,000. And Bo Nickel is at minus 1,600. Bo Nickel is so scarce right now that he doesn't even have a picture up on ESPN. But when you look him up, you know that he's kind of the next fighter that they're placing in here. Tough kid from Pennsylvania. He's only got the 3 pro fights in the Descender series, just 52-second KO. As a matter of fact, every single fight of his has been a minute or less, really. So, he looks like the real deal. I think this number, I trust the number. Jamie Pickett, you have to think that, man, I must really suck if I'm at plus 900 here. Is that going to motivate him to finally stand up? And at what point do you say, look, the kid has no experience in the UFC. How the heck is he at minus 1600? This is an embarrassing line for Pickett. A lot of people in a lot of shows I listened to already say Bo Nickel by submission in the first round. That's the maybe only way you can get plus money on Bo Nickel, which is crazy to think of, a kid with no experience. But I'll tell you this, Pickett has experience. He's bad and chinny. His fights get over with. He gasses. He doesn't have a good tank on him. I don't know anything about Bo Nickel personally. I don't know much about him except that he knocked out a couple bums in the first round. What are your thoughts on this one?
Bo Nickel is a world-class American vice grip wrestler, highly decorated, maybe second only to the coach that coached him at Penn State, Cale Sanderson.
There you
He's from a winning program at Penn State and from winning programs all the way before the time he was in diapers to the time that he got to Penn State. Most wrestlers of his ilk take money and go to other organizations. The UFC always manages to spit up on themselves and miss the talent. In this case, they did not. Pickett's in there because he's a perfect style, big, tall, long, no takedown defense. This is going to be submission 1 or submission 2. That's how you got to bet it. You just look on. You'll see Nickel fighting top 5 caliber by the end of the year or early next. And that's because he's capable of competing with them.
Well, there you go. Nothing else to see. You can tell by his cauliflower ears, this man's been wrestling his whole life. So,
and he's a good kid and a winner and a fam. The periphery is all solid as well. And so, you ask any UFC, MMA, high caliber coach from any team in the world how they can start their prototypical fighter. It's world-class wrestling, and right next to world-class wrestling in the dictionary is a picture of Bo Nickel.
Yeah, and Bo Nickel is not just a wrestler, as you can see from his record here. He's finishing guys. So
wrestlers have to learn how to strike with precision, accuracy. They also have to learn how to evade strikes. And that's not easy for them to acquire. A lot of times wrestlers can have it all, but be chinny as well. So there's a lot to be tested with Nickel. And if Pickett can find a way to hit him on the point, we could learn a lot, because that's his only chance to win, is to find a way to flush him.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that would be the only chance, some lucky catch. But man, probably passing on that, but I will look to see what round 1 submission is. It's got to be plus money somewhere. I know round 1 is minus 200. Just straight round 1 is which might have value. That way you get both sides of it.
Let's just take a little look here.
I'm looking at DraftKings, so I might have to.
Yeah, that's where I'm trying to scroll down as well. Nickel round 1 minus 200. Now that's just to win in round.
I almost trust that better. It's just, it's just.
I love where you're going. Normally, when people say, we take them by sub, take them by KO, I'm an inside the distance guy. Because
Right.
you can outthink yourself sometimes, and with an inside the distance, or as DraftKings calls it, to win by KO, submission, or DQ. But to get that, to me, makes a lot more sense. But in fights where you can get a plus number, this fight is unbettable. Basically, if we want to bet for or again Nickel, it's just going to require a little bit of patience. Just like with Patty, we're not ready to fade Patty yet, but the time it's coming.
The time is coming. No, makes sense. I will continue to look for that those odds. Just by submission is -165. By KO is actually a little bit of plus money. So keep that in mind. Let's move on to the next fight. We have Mateus Gamrot versus Jalen Turner. So I'll start on this one. I wrote Gamrot. I'm so glad I was on Dariush because I felt like the whole world was against me last fight. And Dariush was just better. He's a world-class wrestler. So is Gamrot, but Dariush had the striking. And I'm not going to lie to you. I was on Sarukin against Gamrot, and I thought Sarukin won that fight. I was very disappointed when they gave it to Gamrot, but that's how it is. There's going to be people that say thought Gamrot won. I thought Sarukin won. Whatever. That doesn't matter. Jalen Turner has really impressed me his last few fights. And this man his nickname's the Tarantula, right? He is a tarantula. He's got a 77-inch reach. Think about Gamrot, 70.5-inch reach. He's 6'3" in the lightweight division. That is just a big, stretchy man. When he fought Riddell, I thought Riddell had a fighting chance. He just wrapped Riddell in his tarantula jaws, just like you're watching The Hobbit or something, and took him out on a nice little choke right there. And I don't know, man, plus 180. This is another one of those that I think that Gamrot is got the knowledge and the skills to be able to stay away, pick his spots, get some takedowns, get back up, score some points, and get the heck out of this fight. I think Gamrot's got the knowledge to do that. I don't know if Turner's got the gas tank to go far in this fight. That's my concern. But I also see him at plus 180. I lean Turner at that price.
Fascinating fight here because you got a guy in Turner that's had a completely full camp, but he was preparing for Dan Hooker. And while Turner will tell you he was thinking Dan Hooker was going to take him down, worrying about Dan Hooker wrestling is folly. Let's face it. Okay. He was going to face a tall striker and he was going to get served up. Okay. He almost gets Blanchfielded. Here's Blanchfield getting ready for Santos, but she gets Andrade, a harder fighter. And here's Turner getting ready for one fighter that's a long, tall striker that he can dominate. Now he gets a world-class wrestler. And listen, Dariush is a world-class talent, and Gamrot's a world-class talent. That was a close fight. And though that Sarukian fight was close, he did get the win. Turner has displayed no ability to wrestle whatsoever. So as I assess this fight, and I think you were striking on a lot of it, I think Turner's got to find him, and he better find him early, and he better find him cold. The one thing that Turner has in his favor, that full camp. Meanwhile, Gamrot 3 weeks ago got the call to take this short notice opportunity after he had gotten beat by Dariush. He's eating, Polish sausage and blintzes. So he had to fly to Florida and train for this fight in 3 weeks. So there's what you need to weigh. In my opinion, this is a different class of fighter. Gamrot here and Jalen Turner here because of his singular dimension and his inability to wrestle. This will be a fight where I think Gamrot needs to take the steam out of Turner in round one, and then in round 2 or 3, wipe the floor with him. And I believe that's what's going to happen.
Well, there you go. You said it really well. That's why I just had to lean in.
Doesn't mean that's
maybe
what's going to happen.
Of course. And we know that. I think I overassessed Riddell, and maybe I'm bitter over that, and just now I'm giving too much credit. And I'm trying to I have to find my
Riddell
flaws.
was washed by that fight.
Yeah, probably.
I mean,
when he lost to Fiziev. Yeah.
A short undersized. That Fiziev was his buddy, and that took a lot out of him. That was a devastating knockout.
That was, and he was kind of groomer too. The trainer beat the coach type situation. Now this fight, I finally have a real play on, Lou. So Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Jeff Neal. I admit that I was on the man that Jeff Neal just beat, and I when I watched the fight, I was a little surprised, because I didn't know Jeff Neal was quite that good. I think you were on Neal, by the way, that time. I think we were against each other. You won that one. Um, and I will say that, hands of steel, Jeff Neal surprised me a little bit because Luque was someone I thought was a top tier fighter in his weight class here in the welterweight class. I just kind of thought that. But when I watched Luque fight, I was like, man, he's not fighting with any brains. I kind of thought, almost like what we said about Allen last week, even though Allen finally got the job done. It took us a while to get to it, but we Allen last week, which was really nice. But I kind of look a bit like that, and that he makes some stupid decisions, and just he eventually got KO'd, and Jeff Neal was the man to do it. But then you got to look at what Jeff Neal really is. Losing to Magny, and that went to decision. Losing Stevenson, a top fighter. Don't get me wrong, but if he gets wrestled around by a real wrestler, not like a guy like Luque, he's going to lose. But now you got Shavkat Rakhmonov, that, in my opinion, might be a top 4 guy right now in the welterweight. I think I know he's fought in a lot of bums, but I watch him fight and he just overpowers everybody else. It's almost like the Islam Makhachev when I was watching him when Islam was younger. It was the kind of same, like Georgia beating up a bunch of bad teams. I almost get the same feeling with Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov is a world-class wrestler, and I think that Rakhmonov is going to take Neal out. And I really think that he's going to take Neal out and gas him before the end of round 3. So I took Rakhmonov at -150 to win inside the distance, and I put about a third of that size of a bet on Rakhmonov by submission. I think that Neal won't get knocked out, but I think Rakhmonov wears him down enough for the +175 also to get that submission at the end of the day. Now, this is a little bit of a step up for Rakhmonov, but I don't think it's a giant step up.
I would say that rarely have I listened to a fellow fight enthusiast break down a fight and leave me without anything to say, but I agree with absolutely everything you said here. Luque was made for Neal. You don't want to stand and trade with Neal, and Rakhmonov's only going to stand and trade with Neal long enough to bait him in to get him into the clasp against the fence on the floor and out the door. And so, again, Neal's kind of made for Rakhmonov. You can get lured in on the price. If you want to get crazy, take Neal by KO. Maybe he does a spinning elbow and catches him. I don't know, but I happen to agree with everything you said. I'm very high on Rakhmonov, and I can't wait for him, who's a guy that's understated, doesn't say very much, to get a shot at this kid Chimaev or somebody else as we get down the line.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's a huge compliment when you say that to me, but you still you still broke it down better than me. So there you go. Let's move it to the next fight. And obviously, my second GOAT, or GOAT B, GOAT A, is Nunez, who I've been on since she's been plus money back in the home Rousey days. And I had to stop when she got to -1,000. I tried to get creative a couple times. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it did. But Shevchenko, she almost beat Nunez, and some people thought she did. But anyways, that's her only loss. Shevchenko is maybe the best technical fighter. She's great on the ground. She's great on her feet. She's -800, -900 probably. I would probably be a -1,000 by the time this thing closes. I usually don't use 800s or 900s or anything even above 400 usually in my parlay pieces. But what I do think is that Grasso might be ready to get submitted, and maybe Shevchenko is ready to do that again. I know that Shevchenko, is great as she is, not a lot of power behind her punches. I think that she did KO'd 8 times, 7 submissions, 8 decisions. I just don't know if Grasso is going to have the gas tank to go. Now, I know she's worked on her jiu-jitsu and she's gotten better at that. She's got some great, I would say good wins since the Carla Esparza loss by a majority decision back in 2019. Joan Wood, Viviana Araujo who's actually fighting on this card. Macy Barber, who is a little bit of a kind of a ground fighter herself a little bit. So, in my opinion, I just think Shevchenko in the amount of rounds eventually wears Grasso down. And if there's any shot, I think it's Shevchenko by submission. I took it at plus 260. And the reason that I did take it is because it was over 200. There's three ways that Shevchenko is going to win. It's going to be by decision, it's going to be by KO, or it's going to be by submission. The way I look at it, plus 260, that's pretty good odds for that side of it when Shevchenko is really needs to put the pellets in the metal, maybe get that third fight with Nunez. What are your thoughts?
A lot. First of all, I'm of the opinion that I'm giving Shevchenko GOAT A on the women's side, only because she was forced to fight Amanda at Amanda's weight. Amanda, I regard as a little bit of a bully. And in that second fight, first fight, Amanda won. Second fight, round 3, 4, and 5, Shevchenko won. Amanda was gassing. Now, if we could wave a magic wand and make Amanda get to 130 and have to fight Shevchenko where Shevchenko was at her best, she'd paint her fence. But we don't get to see that. And so I'm going to stick up for Shevchenko just because that's how high I regard her. All that said, the chink in her armor was displayed in her last fight against Talia Santos, where she showed some lack of aptitude on the ground against a forceful grappler. And so what she has in this fight is a deft in the pocket striking boxer from Mexico. So I tend to agree with your assessment, looking for submission. She doesn't have, Shevchenko doesn't have power. I don't think she knocks her out. I think this little gal is brassy. This Mexican fighter, Grasso, is brassy. She's tough. She's got as quick hands or quicker than Valentina. And she's going to hold her own on the feet, and she's conditioned. But once this fight gets off the feet, that's when most questions occur. The young lady, Grasso, has really improved her ground game, but Shevchenko's a world classer. Maybe her stock is down after the Santos debacle where she didn't look good. I want to like Grasso. I want a better. I have a propensity. I live in Phoenix. I love the Mexican culture, the Mexican fight culture, but it's a hard one to back in this situation. I think if we're looking to find a way to attack Valentina, it's with Blanchfield on the next fight.
All right. Well, there you go. Blanchfield in the next fight would be the time to, Blanchfield really shocked me last time too.
Bigger girl, thick, can take her down. You can see Valentina's already using mental warfare with her, saying she's a little girl, she's not ready for this and everything. That's Valentina trying to mentally F with her.
Well, I hope Valentina's not looking past Grasso here.
I don't think so whatsoever. In her interview, Valentina is as consummate a professional as you can find. There's no chink in her professional armor, really, except one thing, and it's right around the horizon, and it's undefeated. Father Time.
All right, good stuff. Let's move on to the main event then. John Bones Jones is finally back against Cyril Gane, and Gane gets the heavyweight title by, default after the Francis contract issues, and I'm not going to say anything right now because I'm so excited to hear your take on this fight. I've listened to a lot of takes. I have my own thoughts. Why don't you have the floor?
Okay, well, thank you. I'll start with Gane, who I regard as an unbelievably accomplished heavyweight, especially in his short a time. He started his professional combat career 2016. 2018, first professional mixed martial arts fight. By 2018, do you know how much world-class exposure John Jones had between his wrestling and his professional fighting? Vast, okay? So with Gane, we've got a guy with very little shallow experience. However, here's a dude that's unbelievably athletic. He's he comes from a kickboxing background, so he's really precise. He comes at you from every angle, can spin with elbows and kicks, and he can hit what he's aiming at. Plus, he moves like a middleweight as a guy that weighs in at 261 or 2 pounds. He's undaunted by this opportunity. It's his second chance at the heavyweight title. He's salivating, I think, for his opportunity. And on the other side of the ring, we got Jon Jones, and the key with Jones and the questions with the GOAT, because we all accept the fact that he was the GOAT. But he's now 35. He's fighting as a heavyweight, so he's packed on weight. How's he going to react in a fight against a bigger man than he's used to for 5 rounds with the weight? Okay, and then there's 3 years of layoff. So that's the intangible for Jones and how this fight sets up. The way I handicap the fight happening is that I believe Jon Jones is the GOAT. I believe he's trained for this fight as the GOAT. He's got 5 other heavyweights in Albuquerque training with him. Most people that are siding with Gane will mention the time off, which is legit. They'll mention the fact that Jones looked poor against other light heavyweights towards the end of his career. That's also true. They'll mention he didn't wrestle. True again. But that's all looking past. And a car with a rear view mirror, the rear view mirror is small. The windshield's big because we got to look ahead. And I'm going to tell you, in this fight, Jon Jones is going to wrestle Gane, because when Francis Ngannou was unable to move in their fight in the 4th and 5th round, he was moving like Frankenstein, got a hold of Gane and took him down. Gane is going to be presented with a world-class nightmare aggressive wrestler on Saturday night. And that aggressive wrestler is out to show the world that he's an aggressive wrestler, and we're going to see aggressive wrestling. We took Jon Jones at open plus 115, and that's all well and good. But if I'm sitting here today and seeing Jon Jones priced at 165, I'm telling you, I'm taking Jon Jones at 165.
169 here at Bet Online. Great stuff. I didn't make a play on this. I'm not sure if I will. There's just 3 red flags that almost go against my UFC handicapping 101. A, you mentioned the ring rust already. Jones not fighting for 3 years. B, he's stepping up in weight class. And C, over 4.5 rounds is minus 145. You've seen these judges before. And maybe Jones does win by points. They're telling you it's going 5 rounds. There's a lot of pros and cons that I see to the Jon Jones being the GOAT and everything. I will say I feel like his last part of his career before his rebirth here, he wasn't as dominant as I thought. Since he knocked out Cormier with an elbow, we found out he was on the juice then. And
that's been corrected now. Excuse the interruption. His nanos were so low that if tested under today's condition, it wouldn't have been an issue and wouldn't have been brought to the press. I believe that fully.
Okay, well, he has been caught with other illegal drugs too. So,
exactly, and that's another part of my handicap, because if he was clean and not drinking, I wouldn't be releasing him. I want Jon Jones, the bad boy, that's out drinking and I'm telling you, that's what a fighter does.
I don't know how he has a split decision against Sand with his knees. Dominic Reyes, 5 rounds. Reyes is pretty good.
When he fought Reyes was a killer and killing everybody, and Jones beat him, bored as he was. And so, I mean, I get where you're going. And the fascinating part of this fight is that there's going to be a very smart handicappers with different schools of thought on each fighter, and we don't know. We got to watch and see what happens. Gane should not be underestimated here in any way, shape, or form, because if Johnny Bones Jones spends 2 rounds trying to take him down and he can't, and he gasses, Gane could cut him to ribbons. So I want you to continue to speak, because I think you're presenting the Gane side with realistic points.
Let me hate on the Gane side now. I don't like how he fights on the back of his heels sometimes. I think that Gane should have beaten people earlier and he sits back, and that's another reason why it's, they think that's going to go to the decision, almost scared. And if somebody gets extremely aggressive, that's his size, like a Jon Jones at 6'4", height size anyway. he could fall on the back of his heels and definitely get down and lose this fight. He doesn't have the experience that Jones has. He blew through the UFC starting in what, 2018, 19 was it? It was really 2019 was his first fight. And
UFC fight.
Yeah, first UFC fight. He had two professional fights before that. Okay,
that's right. Starting in 18.
So he's young, and he went through a lot of them. He went 5 rounds with Jorginho, which is just that he was just kind of scared of Jorginho. He's got great defense, and he likes to sit back and counter. But I don't know if that style, sitting back and counter, is how you're going to beat John Jones, because John Jones has the length. He's got the arms lengths. He can jab his way through this. He can keep his distance, and he can set him up. And so as good as Gane is, when he fought Francis, and I was on Gane, big plus, decent plus money. Gane had that one chance, went for like a heel hook or something. He was on top, and then Francis rolled him over. I was like, there's your one chance. I will say he put up a good show against Francis. But in my opinion, if Francis was lined even with Jones, are you still taking Jones, or are you taking Francis?
If John Jones faces Godzilla, I'm taking John Jones.
There you go. Okay, so that tells you your conviction. I expected that. So I don't have a play on this. I tend to think that going to decision is the obvious thing, just because Jones has went his decision against some of the bigger guys. But I think if it goes to decision, you're certainly leaving it to the cards, which hasn't been too kind to a lot of fighters. And the cards sometimes will lean a little bit towards the current champion. Just in general, I'm not saying that this is going to happen. But in order for them to give up the belt, that's interesting. I wish I was you and took plus 115 is all I got to say. I don't like it at minus 160, minus 180.
I would tell you, I don't like to be overly confident, but I think when we look back on this, we're going to wonder how we could have ever got John Jones at this kind of price. As far as what he did back then, that's acceptable, but it's rear view. If you listen to his interviews, if you see who he's been training with and how he's been training, he's not looking to come out here and try and eke out a win. Okay. 4.5 is a effing joke. It ain't gonna get to 4.5, Kiev. This fight's not going that far. John
Jones was probably my lead.
Is not gonna let Gane have room and dance and prance and look nice in space. It's not gonna happen. This is gonna be, I believe this is gonna be a lawnmower and spring grass, and it's gonna be a relatively one-sided affair. I've been convinced of that. That's the way I'm betting it. I don't think that 4.5 is correct in any way, shape, or form.
Well, then let's just say this. I'm not disagreeing with your Jones side. I'm just impartial. I completely agree on your under 4.5, 2 heavyweights, never seen each other. Fireworks can happen. Maybe Jones does gash after these years. There's just so many ways this can go under. Somebody can be brittle in this situation too and get a TKO.
Bad cut, something goofy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Let's agree on that. Lou, we are out of time. Thank you so much for breaking down this wonderful card. I cannot wait to go to my buddy's house on Saturday. He's got one of those big projectors that's like a 50 feet long or whatever. And we're going to watch it with some beers and have a good time. Where can our listeners and viewers get your great information and media?
Lou at gamblou.com is the email, socials at Gamb Lou, and the webpage is just about to be up, www.gamblou.com. My podcast, the Bout Business podcast with all my final releases, drops in an hour or two this afternoon. It won't be anything different than what you've just heard right here, but the final releases will be listed there. Kiev, I want to thank you for having me on. You do a great job. You have phenomenal guests. You cover all the sports great. I wish you well. Continue to do a great job, and thanks again.
Always an honor, Lou. Make sure you guys check out Lou on Twitter at Gamb Lou. Check out the Bout Business podcast.